Dear linguists, hello. Here we meet yet again for discussing another poem, Dust of Snow by Robert Frost. Before we go to the paraphrasing, let us give the poem a quick read. Dust of Snow by Robert Frost. The way a crow shook down on me, the dust of snow from a hemlock tree, has given my heart a change of mood and saved some part of a day I had rued. It's a very simple rhyming poem. Before we go on to the detailed discussion, I'll just quickly talk about the rhyming scheme of the poem. Since it is a rhyming poem, so there is a plan which the poet decided that according to that plan, the words are going to rhyme. We say here crow and snow. These two words are rhyming. And if we see the second verse, there is no other word rhyming with crow and snow. Therefore, we'll label them as A. Coming to the next, we see me here and tree here. In the second verse, nothing rhymes with me and tree. So we call it B and B. Coming to verse 2, let's see heart. So what is rhyming with heart here? Part, nothing else. So we label it as C. And then we have mood, and the word rude is rhyming with mood. So let's call it D. So here, if we see, this is the sequence of the rhyming words A, B, C, D, C, D. So what becomes the rhyme scheme? A, B, C, D, C, D. It's quite simple. Right then. Moving to the explanation, let's come to the first verse. The way a crow shook down on me the dust of snow from a hemlock tree. Hemlock tree, now these are hemlock trees. And one thing that you should remember, that all parts of this tree are poisonous. And that is the reason the hemlock tree is considered as a symbol of death and gloom. So let's come to the explanation here. Now this poem is set in a scene where the poet is in a bad mood, right? The poet is here in a bad mood and is just walking by a tree, a hemlock tree. So this particular tree, why has the poet mentioned this particular tree? Because it is symbolic of depression, death, gloom, this being a poisonous tree. So as he passes by, a crow happens to throw some snow dust. Now where is the crow sitting? The crow is sitting on the tree. And when the poet passes under this hemlock tree, he moves and happens to throw some snow dust on him. If we see here, there are two agents of nature. Which are the two agents of nature that are being talked about here? One is the hemlock tree and the other is crow. Both these agents of nature are symbolic of negative emotions. They are symbolic of sadness, gloom, and death. Just like the poet's mood, which was in the opening scene. Coming to the next stanza, what happens as a result of the dust of snow being shaken on the poet? So the poet here says, has given my heart a change of mood and saved some part of a day I had rued. An important word for you to remember here is rued, which means regretted. So, some part of his day, the poet might have regretted. Maybe he has done something wrong or something which he did not want has happened. So, he was regretting till that moment. Though the reasons are unknown, the poet has not given the reason why he was regretting his day. But anyhow, he was having a terrible day. But the falling of the dust of snow on his head has lifted his mood instantly, has changed his mood. And the word lifted here shows that it has changed his mood for good. So, when we say that our mood is lifted, it means it has lifted to be better, to be good. And this was the change of mood that the poet is talking about. That how did his mood change? From bad, it became good. And who was responsible for this change in mood is the crow. And the rest of it was saved. What is it? It is the day. The rest of the day was saved. He did not regret anymore and he was happy. Here, a very important element to be kept in mind is irony. The poet has used irony very beautifully. Now, how has the poet used irony? I'm sure you all know what is irony, something against the expectation. What is expected and exactly the opposite happens is irony. And how has the poet used irony here? Generally, the hemlock tree and the crow, they are used as symbols of negativity. Like I have previously told you that crow and hemlock tree, they are considered to be symbols of depression, gloom, death. So they are used for negative references. But in the poem, the poet has used them beautifully to portray that inauspicious things can bring joy and happiness too. So these two aspects, the crow and the hemlock tree, despite being considered inauspicious and used for negative references, have brought about a positive change. So, this is not expected, this is contrary to the expectations. That is why we say that this is the use of irony. And through the use of irony, the poet is giving us a very, very clear message is that we should accept whichever way the nature chooses to bless us. Now, sometimes we don't understand why negative things are happening around us, but if we have a positive perspective and try to take the good out of the bad. And secondly, that we should not take things for granted, waiting for big events in our life to make us happy. We keep on procrastinating our happiness. So, whatever trivial things which we consider trivial might not be actually trivial. So we should take all the events, no matter they give us little happiness or we become ecstatic, we should not take anything in life for granted. Poem has a lot of important elements in it and we'll do a quick discussion of that. Now all these elements I have already discussed previously, but it is just a quick recap of the important elements. The message that the poet wishes to give is that seemingly insignificant events might not be that insignificant and they can bring a positive change in our lives. So we should not ignore any happening in our life, any event in our life. Everything is important and can give us a learning. And sometimes apparently negative events can bring about something positive. And this is the message that the poet wishes to convey through irony. Here in this poem, the poet has very beautifully used symbolism. As I have discussed earlier, that crow and the hemlock tree, they are both symbolic of negative emotions, death, sadness, depression. So, this is the use of symbolism. The irony, how a negative symbol, that is the crow, brought about a positive change in the poet's life. This is how the poet has used irony in the poem. Themes which the poet has attempted to cater to or pay attention to is the nature and human interaction, that is the interaction between nature and human, like how the crow brings in a positive change in the poet's mood. Connected to this is nature's healing property. Now, nature's healing property is not a secret. We all know and have experienced that when we spend time in nature, it brings in positive changes into us. May it be something as simple as if we are disturbed and we spend some time in our garden, we feel peaceful. So, nature's healing property as a theme has been catered to by the poet in the poem. Significance of events in our life. So, we should not take anything for granted and thank God for whatever He has blessed us with, whatever experiences, because there is a learning from every experience, and even good can come from bad. So, these are the themes that the poet has attempted to bring our attention to. Without further ado, I'm going to discuss the literary devices. You all know the poetry devices, and these are the devices which are used to make the poems beautiful. Though this is a short poem, but the poet has used quite a number of devices here. If we see rhyme is the most basic device, as I discussed in the very beginning, the rhyming scheme. So every rhyme has a rhyming scheme. So the rhyming words here are crow, snow, me, tree, heart, part, mood, and rude. So this is how the poet has used rhyme. Symbolism, discussed earlier. Crow is symbolic of sorrow, fear, depression, and hemlock tree is symbolic of death. This is how the poet has used symbolism. Alliteration, we all know alliteration. The initial sound of consecutive words is same or similar. So, saved, some. Repeated sound of S, that is, so, makes this phrase alliteration. Inversion is a changed order of the words. The words are put in a different order, which is different from how we talk normally. And there are different reasons why poets used inversion. It could be for rhyming or just to add a general interest. So, the way a crow shook down on me the dust of snow. What is the ideal order here? The way a crow shook down the dust of snow on me. So that should have been the correct order. But the poet has changed the order to add interest in the poem. This device is called inversion. Assonance, when two or more words have a repeated vowel. The difference between assonance and alliteration. You need to remember that in alliteration, it is a consonant sound, and assonance is a repeated vowel sound, that is A, E, I, O, U. So, repeated sound. The second difference between alliteration and assonance is there. We see that in alliteration, the initial sound is repeated, right? So, the initial consonant sound is repeated. Whereas in assonance, it is not the initial sound. The sound of vowel can be anywhere, right? It can be initially, it can be within the word. Like here, if we see shook down on me, the sound of the vowel O has been repeated. So this makes it assonance. And I hope the difference between alliteration and assonance is clear. Alliteration, number one, is a consonant sound. And number two, it is in the beginning. It is essentially in the beginning of the word. Now, here there's one more device, enjambment. Now, enjambment can be a printing error also, but here the poet has used enjambment. If you see the entire first verse and the second verse, they make one sentence. The way a crow shook down on me, the dust of snow from a hemlock tree has given my heart a change of mood and saved some part of a day I had rued. So if you see, this is actually one sentence. Maximum, here it could have been a comma. But the poet has written the poem in a way that he has divided this sentence into 8 lines. And at the end of line, there is no punctuation. You see, there is no punctuation, means there is no comma anywhere to give that pause. So this device, where in a poem the lines are divided, but at the end there is no punctuation. So the lines are ending abruptly without any punctuation. And why is there no punctuation? Because this is actually just one sentence, and within one sentence you can have a comma, and the comma has also not been given here. You can't be putting full stops here, right? Because it is one sentence. What the poet has done is he has broken his sentence into different lines, that is line 1, line 2, line 3, line 4, but could not give a punctuation because this being one sentence. This device is called enjambment, where the different lines of the poem end abruptly without any punctuation. So these are the devices that the poet has used in the poem Dust of Snow. I hope I was of some help to you. Meet you with my next video. Till then, happy watching, great learning. Thank you.